you do. When you leave here today, some of you may be thinking, how can I win the rat race that awaits me out there? Well, first, you'll have to decide whether to join the race. As Lily Tomlin once said, if you join the rat race and you win, you are still a rat. Before I end, I want to leave you with this thought. A Duke University chaplain was visiting a very successful graduate in Connecticut. After a long dinner, the parents excused themselves and hustled to get the kids off to bed, leaving the chaplain alone with the family pet, a large, sleek greyhound. The father and the kids had earlier bragged about the dog that once raced professionally down in Florida. Sitting there, the chaplain began chatting with the dog. "Guess you heard I came up here from Miami," said the greyhound. "Oh, you retired?" the chaplain asked. No, I didn't retire," explained the greyhound. "I spent 10 years as a professional racing greyhound. 10 years of running around that track with those other dogs, chasing that rabbit. 5 days a week, chasing the rabbit. But one day, I got up close and got a good look at that rabbit. It was a fake. I had spent my life chasing a fake rabbit. I didn't retire. I quit. Thank you.
It's now my privilege to introduce this year's commencement speaker, Dr. S. Ward Casscells. He is the Tyson Distinguished Professor of Medicine and Public Health and Vice President for External Affairs and Health Policy at the University of Texas Health Science Center in Houston. He's a senior scholar at the Texas Heart Institute. From April 2007 through April 2009, he served as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs, where he was credited with turning around a struggling $45 billion health and education system with 137,000 employees, 10 million patients in 900 clinics in 100 countries. The system is now #1 in most surveys of patient satisfaction. For this work, Dr. Casscells received the Department of Defense's highest civilian award, the Distinguished Public Service Medal. Dr. Casscells graduated Yale College and Harvard Medical School magna cum laude. He trained in medicine and cardiology at Beth Israel, Brigham and Women's, and Massachusetts General Hospitals, at the Harvard School of Public Health, the National Institutes of Health, and at Scripps. His publications have been in the area of prevention of heart attack and stroke, Bayesian decision-making, medical ethics, influenza and emergency preparedness, nanotechnology, and healthcare management. His most recent book, When It Mattered Most, was a tribute to medics killed in Iraq and Afghanistan and was termed by Newsweek's Evan Thomas as a noble work. Dr. Casscells is a colonel in the Army Reserve, and he served in Iraq in 2006, earning the Joint Commendation Medal and honorary membership in the Iraqi Medical Regiment. He's a member of numerous professional and honorary societies. He and his wife and 3 children are Texans currently living in Washington. And last but not least, he's Stephen Casscells-Hamby's uncle. Please welcome Dr. S. Ward Casscells.
Thank you, Headmaster, for that generous introduction. Not a word about the things that were dumb or selfish or cowardly, maybe just as well. And thank you for your leadership of this superb school. Graduating seniors, congratulations. Now what's next? So far, so good. but there's a lot ahead of you. What do you want? If you are like my students, you want a fair chance to succeed, to find a career you're good at and that you love, to find someone that you love who loves you. You also know that in the larger world, there are billions whose needs are food, shelter, freedom from violence, oppression, and disease, freedom to speak, to assemble, to elect their government, to worship. You know that what you do in life ought to help some of them in some way. And you want to do this without harming the earth. You have learned to educate yourselves and each other, but others should be thanked too. Do you know the story that the journalist Tom Friedman tells of a dinner party in Washington where a businessman who'd had a couple of Diet Pepsis trotted out the old lie, "Those who can't do, teach." A teacher at the dinner challenged him to defend that remark, and he said, "Okay, what do you make?" She said, "I make a difference." Let's thank the teachers. His mother abandoned the family, but his father gave him a love of reading. She died when he was 11, as did his grandparents, aunt and uncle, over the next year. Alone, at age 13, he emigrated to New York, joined the Army. Who am I talking about? A few years later, he wrote the Federalist Papers, which shaped 13 colonies into the United States of America. Alexander Hamilton. Seniors, do you know the poem by Gillian that reads, "Richer than I, you never can be. I had a mother who read to me." And what do these giants have in common? Faculty, you're not eligible, you'll know the answer, but I did not. Moses, Samuel, Nebuchadnezzar, Mohammed, Alexander the Great, Dante, William the Conqueror, Johannes Kepler, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, Robert E. Lee, William Tecumseh Sherman, Admiral David Farragut, General Sam Houston, Buffalo Bill Cody, Johann Sebastian Bach, William Wordsworth, John Keats, Rudyard Kipling, Herman Melville, Joseph Conrad, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, John James Audubon, Eleanor Roosevelt, Maya Angelou, statesman Cyrus Vance, NASCAR's Cale Yarborough, inventor and philanthropist John Abele, Jack Welch of GE fame, Staples founder Tom Stemberg, President Andrew Jackson, General Wesley Clark, Charlie Chaplin, Ella Fitzgerald, Sam Goldwyn, Richard Burton, James Brown, Pierce Brosnan, Willie Nelson, Jack Nicholson, Oprah Winfrey, Larry King, President Gerald Ford, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and his Supreme Court nominee, Judge Sonia Sotomayor. What did they have in common? They all grew up without a father. If you'd guessed that, I'd have given you my fee for this talk, or even better, $1 whole. No one's ever gotten it. The list excludes, by the way, those who were estranged from their fathers: Winston Churchill, Abraham Lincoln, and Nelson Mandela. Andrew Jackson's father died when he was born, his mother when he was a boy. When asked how he rose from a dirt floor cabin to the presidency, the old general credited his mother. She was as gentle as a dove and as brave as a lioness. The memory of her mother, of my mother, and her teachings were all the capital I had in life. So let's thank mothers. Okay, dads who are thinking to themselves, well, I'll take the weekend off. Remind you to think at the top of your backswing of the immortal words of perhaps the greatest university president this country's seen, Father Hesburgh, Notre Dame. The greatest gift a man can give his children is to love their mother, even when you'd like to kill her. Okay, graduates, you want to make the world a better place, you want to do good. Secondly, you'd like to do well. You know that financial security, respect, satisfaction, happiness itself are mere byproducts of doing your duty. That is your mountaintop. But how will you get there? There are many routes. Each route has its perils. And even those with a head start, such as yourselves, may not make it. Some of you A students may be aware of something I learned from Professor Childs when I was at Yale. SAT scores and even grades are poor predictors of later success by any measure. And the headmaster at Houston's Kincaid School, similar to Trinity, once remarked to a visitor, "And over there are my A students, who one day will be working for my C students." What's up with that? Well, it's only partly true, but it raises the question of whether the C students are sometimes more creative, less risk-averse, more fun to follow. You will have some bad luck, illness, accidents. You will make mistakes and learn humility. It will teach you teamwork. One hand washes the other. You will prevail. Prevailing gives true confidence and resilience. Resilience. One of our sergeants once said, "Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional." Many of you will have your hearts broken by love, but as your great-grandmothers said, there's a lid for every pot. At work, you will be in and out, maybe fired, back in again. As the 118th Psalm has it, the same stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Some of you will be late bloomers whose seeds may not even sprout or bear fruit in your lifetime, like Johnny Appleseed. But those who come after you will remember and say, "I have drunk from wells I did not dig." My parents survived the Depression. My father, who was orphaned, joined the Army, became a great surgeon. They sent me to a school very like Trinity, where the coaches were the kings of cliches. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going, plastered everywhere in the locker room. And the worst, don't have a wishbone where your backbone ought to be. The kinds of cliches that cause involuntary eye rolling, even among freshmen and sophomores. Years later, I ran into hard times. A company that I had started failed, pushing my family and me to the edge of bankruptcy. The same month, a flood destroyed my office and my laboratory, and I was found to have a cancer that had been missed by 4 good doctors when it was curable, committing me to years of radiation and experimental chemotherapies. I suppose God was testing me and teaching me. What sustained me was the love of my parents and wife and 3 very young children, the examples of the resilience of my parents and my patience, and their confidence in me. And what about the cliches of the coaches? One day in Baghdad, we came under attack. We'd been out jogging. When you run in the military, you just carry a sidearm, not a rifle. And we heard the air raid siren, and in come the rockets and the mortars. Not much a 9mm sidearm can do against that. So we sprinted for the nearest bunker, about a half-mile away. As a 54-year-old, anemic from recent chemotherapy, I was hard-pressed. And I thought these were my last minutes. And of all the dumb things that would rush through my mind, came back those coaches' dumb sayings. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. The tough get going. and I found myself gaining on a couple of young Marines. When you were young, graduates, a great doctor promised you wherever you go, you will top all the rest, except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. Your gang will fly on, you'll be left in a lurch, you'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, and the chances are then that you'll be in a slump. You remember it. When you're in a slump, you're not in for much fun. Unslumping yourself's not easily done. How? Dr. Seuss gave no tips. Here are mine. You will rebound if you live the values that your parents and these great teachers have nagged you about for 12 years: honesty, love, justice, hope, humility, courage, duty, faith, service, and persistence. In so doing, you will win the friends and the family who will carry you when you fall. I will focus on persistence and service, not on courage. If someone who, as a teenager, was afraid of the dark and still afraid of the water, of heights, and of closed spaces, could manage to serve in Baghdad in the darkest days of 2006, then anyone can. I recently wrote a book about the 216 medics and corpsmen who've died in Iraq and Afghanistan. Kids I knew well, I taught them, served with them, and I'm here to tell you these are kids who didn't always get along with their principal or even their parents. Some of them had fallen out of touch with their truant officer, even their parole officer. Only 20% came from an intact family. But when the call rang out, medic or corpsman up, and they had to decide whether to scramble through the flying lead to carry the wounded back to safety some 30,000 times, they answered the call. And for 216, it was their last and noblest decision. So I do not worry about the courage of Americans. I marvel at it. And when the time comes that you hear the call, who will go for us? You will say, as Isaiah said, send me. Now, I admitted there's such a thing as luck. But who was it who said, the harder I work, the luckier I get? No one ever guesses it. Seniors, who said it? Thomas Jefferson, the least poetic, but one of the truest things he ever wrote. And I'm sorry to tell you, it's all about the effort. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence, and nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent, wrote a B student named Calvin Coolidge. The heights by great men achieved were not attained in sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward in the night. Any guesses? Faculty, hold back. Longfellow. Okay, better and more modern, the advice given 60 years ago to budding comedian Sam Levinson when he left home by his immigrant father. Remember, son, if you ever want a helping hand, you'll find it at the end of your own arm. And if you want your dreams to come true, don't sleep. Okay, whose story is this? He was born poor. At age 9, his mother died, as did his aunt and uncle. At age 16, when he was age 18, his older sister died in childbirth, along with a baby. Age 22, he was bankrupt. Age 23, he ran for the legislature and lost. Unrequited love. Her father asked if he even knew who his grandfather was. He replied, "No, sir, I do not. But I am more concerned with who his grandson will become." At age 24, his fiancée died. At age 31, he had a severe depression. His wife had a nervous breakdown. At age 34, he lost another run for Congress, and again at age 37 and 39, and his son died. At age 46, he lost yet again in a race for Congress, and at age 49, he lost in a race for the United States Senate, and at age 51, Abraham Lincoln was elected president. It's never too late to fail. It's never too late to succeed. This man flunked law school. He was crippled by an illness. He became a great president, Franklin Roosevelt. Another struggled with a lisp and a distant father, lifelong episodes of depression. He flunked the entrance exam to military school twice, but his determined leadership saved the free world, Winston Churchill. He also won the Nobel Prize for Literature. This one dropped out of Harvard, but he accelerated the whole world, became its richest man and its greatest philanthropist, Bill Gates. Son of a maid and a cook, he flunked 10th grade, dropped out of college, joined the Navy, became a medical orderly. He says it was caring for wounded sailors and Marines that gave him the gentle humor that is Bill Cosby. Homeschooled. He failed as a shopkeeper, then as a farmer. He tried his hand at politics and electrified the world with 7 words, give me liberty or give me death. Patrick Henry. Slow to learn, he excelled in math, but his PhD thesis was turned down. He tried to be an inventor, but his first 2 patents were rejected. He took a lowly government clerk's job. Career was at a dead end, and at age 26, he published the findings that you know so well, E equals mc squared, the photoelectric effect, and the theory of special relativity, winning the Nobel Prize, of course, Albert Einstein. He took 22 years to present his first scientific findings, reviewed by the eminent Professor Houghton. All that was new in them was false, and what was true was old. But he went on to be the greatest scientist of the last 2 centuries, rivaled only by Einstein, Charles Darwin. Dismissed from school at age 7 because the teacher said he was addled. Have you ever dismissed anyone for that, Mr. Mohan? Okay. Only his mother believed in him. With almost no education, having lost his hearing with a head injury, he worked 20 hours a day inventing the light bulb, the phonograph, that's kind of an early iPod, the motion picture camera. Next, the effort to develop a durable, rechargeable battery. His assistant complained that they had wasted time on more than 10,000 failed experiments. Nonsense, he replied. I now know 10,000 things that don't work. When Life magazine's Man of the Millennium was asked if he was a genius, he answered, genius is 99% perspiration, only 1% inspiration. Of course, Thomas Edison. A brief word about service. When Lincoln began his presidency, a cabinet member found him blacking his boots, polishing his boots, and said, Mr. President, in Washington, a gentleman does not black his own boots. Without looking up, Lincoln replied, then whose boots do they black? A century ago, the Salvation Army was on tough times. Tough economic times, and at Christmas, the staff told the founder, Reverend William Booth, that if he sent his annual telegraph to all the volunteers, there was money for a single word. He spent the whole evening thinking, what single word could I send to rally the embattled Salvation Army? They were being jailed, they were out of money, operating in dozens of countries around the world. What single word that would be meaningful? Was it love? Was it service? Was it duty? What single word did he send that rallied that great organization for 2 centuries? The single word, others. Last quiz, who said you make a living by what you get, a life by what you give? This is the bonus prize. Okay, how about freshmen? Winston Churchill. To those of you who are grumbling, what a load of idealistic nonsense. Give a guy a Harvard degree and he thinks he can say anything to anybody. Let me describe to you an old cartoon that shows a sandlot baseball field and the idealists are playing the realists. First inning, idealists 0, realists 1. second inning. Idealists 0, realists 3. Third inning, idealists 1, realists 4. Fourth inning, idealists 0, realists 6. Final score, idealists 1, realists 0. Let me close with a prayer for your future, and you know the short version is, Dear God, make me the person my dog thinks I am. The real version is this, by St. Francis, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. That's it, graduates. Tough times ahead. Serve, work hard, don't quit, and as we say in Texas, vaya con Dios.
And before we present the candidates for the awarding of the diplomas, I'm pleased to introduce the ensemble of Veronica Calle, Stephen Casscells-Hamby, Allison May, Thomas Muller, and Bradley Stevens from the class of 2009, performing an original piece, Say No More, composed by Stephen Casscells-Hamby.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to present to members of the class of 2009. Row 1, please stand. Bradley Paul Albertson. Austin King Barton. Douglas Ross Beach. William Archibald Lewis Blydenberg. Cole Brandon Bosson. Melanie Pierce Burkich. Megan Alexandra Brown. Liza Charlotte Brown-Pensky. Emily Carol Buckley. Daniel Robert Burns. Kyla Carol Byron. Richard Manning Cacavello. Veronica Marie Calle. Alexander James Carlson. Caitlin Marie Carr. Stephen Ward Casscells-Hamby. Row 1, please be seated. Row 2, please stand. Adam Nicholas Chellaney. Annabelle Margaret Chambers. Courtney Elizabeth Clark. Audrey Catherine Cohen. Michael Blaine Collins. Harrison Michael Combs. Daniel Christopher Crotty. Mary Catherine Danaher. Elizabeth Ann Doherty. Caitlin Aaron Davidson. Jordan Page Davis. Erin Kathleen Davison. Brendan Renard D'Souza. Brianna Rochelle D'Souza.